11. So clerk, if you'll read that out, please, we will take a few seconds and distribute the copies of the amendment.
Amendment number 11 on economic security programs offered by Ms. Omar.
Ms. Omar, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My amendment will restore the 2024 appropriation funding to the funding levels agreed to in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, protecting vital economic security programs. This budget resolution would lead to dangerous cuts for social safety programming that millions of our constituents rely on to meet their basic needs. Mandatory spending for income security programs, including SNAP and TANF, would be slashed by nearly $1 trillion under this budget framework. The Women, Infant, and Children program, which provides nutrition assistance to 5 million women and children, would be cut by $800 million. House Republicans would also cripple new affordable housing development under this proposal. Funding for home investment partnership programs would be cut by nearly 70%, resulting in 20,000 view homes being constructed or renovated in communities across the country. These cuts would increase housing costs further by eliminating funding for housing choice vouchers for 20,000 households, including approximately 6,000 households headed by seniors. The added cruelty of these implicit cuts is the timing. The United States is grappling with a rising food insecurity and poverty rates as the positive impacts of past economic support, like the enhanced child tax credit, have faded. We are also dealing with affordable housing shortage. This is only getting worse in this high interest rate environment. And yet Republicans are determined to force deep cuts to programs that help keep people fed and safely housed right before the winter during these hunger and housing crises. My amendment would ensure that Congress does not leave countless Americans out in the cold without enough food to feed their families. If you care about your constituents' livelihoods and well-being, you should vote for this amendment.
I thank the gentlelady and would now open up the floor for anyone who would like to take time to oppose the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I request time.
I yield to the gentleman from Michigan, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's start with a question. Which government programs create individual and family confidence and resilience? Now let's get to reality. For generations, Americans have prized the values of hard work and self-sufficiency, and prospects for upward mobility have long encouraged people of all backgrounds to move up the economic ladder. However, rather than embracing these ideals, our nation's welfare programs continue to trap Americans in a perpetual state of dependency on government assistance. These programs are allowing too many able-bodied adults to sit at home, resulting in major workforce shortages and driving costs up for businesses, which are then passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. And the cycle starts anew. As a nation, we must break this cycle and return our welfare system to its original purpose as a temporary, I repeat, temporary safety net for those truly in need, not a final destination for able-bodied Americans who refuse to work. This is not a controversial idea. In fact, in 1996, then Senator Biden justified his own vote for bipartisan welfare reform, which included work requirements to incentivize employment and reduce welfare caseloads. Biden said then, quote, "The culture of welfare must be replaced with the culture of work. The culture of dependence must be replaced with the culture of self-sufficiency and personal responsibility." I don't agree with the president on much, but that's very well stated. I hope he wrote it. As described in a recent piece by the American Enterprise Institute, work requirements are, quote, "an effective anti-poverty tool, especially in light of the evidence that they actually increase employment and raise income for families." Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit the AEI article into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. This amendment undermines our efforts for fiscal responsibility while promoting dependency. I repeat, individual and family dependency on government rather than empowering Americans through the opportunity. So again, let's end with a question on my part here. Tell me government programs that actually create the environment of a hand up, not a hand out. And I'll support that any day. And with that, I yield to my colleague, Congressman Klein.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to emphasize that this budget provides more than $9 trillion in funding for low-income programs over the next decade. And we can talk about these programs. We can talk about the amendment from the gentlelady to add almost $1 trillion more. But let's talk about what the impact of this spending actually would do and has done to inflationary costs and to costs of housing. And the gentlelady talked about affordable housing crisis. We have affordable housing problems in my district as well. And I go to my builders and I ask them, why are we having problems? What are your main drivers of your costs when you build houses? And what they say are the environmental regulations that were just tacked on last year. That you have the Green New Deal that was just passed under the guise of the Inflation Reduction Act and did nothing to reduce inflation, but it sure did a lot to increase the cost of housing. And so, I would say that we could do more to address the affordable housing crisis by reducing regulations on small businesses, home builders, and other small businesses that would actually help to bring down the cost of housing and help those in our communities who are facing affordable housing crises. So this amendment would simply continue to fuel that inflationary fire that has raised the cost of housing, raised the cost of building affordable housing, and actually run contrary to the aim of the gentlelady's amendment. So I would oppose the amendment, and with that, I yield back.
Using the balance of your time here, I just want to say, I haven't met a member of Congress on either side that doesn't want to help people who are struggling. They're working hard and still having a tough time making ends meet. We can argue about making, ways to make it more efficient, ways to get the states involved, ways to make the programs more cost effective. But at the end of the day, I think at a base level, and there's requirement issues, there are benefit issues, there are other things related to means-tested welfare. But I think we have to start. We've got a job participation rate that's the lowest, not the lowest, but I think it's the lowest in about 25 years. We need to restore the dignity of work and the work ethic in this country, not just because it's a fiscal matter, because it's good for people to use their God-given talents to contribute to our great country. With that, I'm going to yield 1 minute for the final comments from the gentlelady from Minnesota.
I believe the people of this country are dignified people. No one stands in line to get food unless they need it. No one goes through the rigorous humiliation that it takes for you to apply for welfare programs. Dignity is within people. What we are talking about is the work that we have to do here in government to try to support those who need it. I also know that there are countless members on this committee and in Congress who have had the support of government programs who are now wealthy and well off. So the idea that because somebody is on a government program, that they are going to stay on a government program forever is not something that exists. There are many countries around the world who provide government assistance where people are not constantly on welfare. We have to provide the bootstraps if we are saying people need to pull themselves up.
Thank you. If
Yeah,
I may,
please.
gentlemen, yield, because we're obviously running way ahead of schedule and have done this sparingly throughout. So now it really needs to be good, right? I just want to respond to something that the chairman said, because I sincerely disagree with the comment that we need to restore the American people's work ethic. I think we can cheer the fact, and there is data after data that shows this, we have the most productive workforce in the world today. We can also cheer the fact that there are more Americans of a working age, or excuse me, a higher percentage of working age Americans in the workforce today than at any point since 1999. That, quote, great resignation storyline that you would read about a couple of years ago is as out of date as 4-year-old milk. The reality is what has built this country is the American work ethic. And those that have this perception that there's this group of people out there just sitting on their couch watching Jerry Springer all day, and that they're collecting a huge amount of money and that's what's blowing up the deficit and debt, it just isn't so. I can tell you from a perspective of a working class district in Philadelphia, almost everyone I know works hard and comes from a working family. That is the reality of America today. So to the best we can, let's defeat any sort of negative caricatures about the work ethic of the American people.
The gentleman yield.
We've got some time. Go ahead, Mr.
I just
Klein.
wanted to ask the gentleman from Philadelphia, wouldn't he agree that the workforce participation rate over the last 20 years, not the last 2 since COVID, but the last 20, has been steadily decreasing?
Yeah, so I thought the gentleman was going to make a much more of a smart aleck remark than his sincere and good question, given our sports bantering that typically goes on. Actually, Mark Zandi, when he was here testifying in our committee, spoke to that. Over the last 25 years, our worker participation rate through Democratic and Republican presidencies has declined. He said most of that is explained, though, by also the aging of our population. Even more worrying, though, over the next generation, as the graying of our population continues, that is all. Excuse me. That is also supposed to continue. So again, though, let's just make sure we're not mixing apples and oranges. We do have a population that is getting older, and a higher percentage of Americans will be out of the workforce due to older age.
Some of us are graying faster than others.
Sorry.
Last comment on this. In my district, I can't imagine it's any different than anyone else's. There are people that need it, probably desperately need it, and but for the grace go I. And when they need it, we need to make sure it's working and that the people who need it have those resources. But I will tell you, in my district, there are a number of people that abuse the system. And I hear it from businesses, I hear it from other community leaders who say there are people who take advantage of the system. And I don't understand. I don't think we need to cast aspersion on everybody that's on welfare. We should, like you said, champion and cheer on everybody to be the best that their God-given potential allows. But why not put just a common sense, quality control, guardrail, whatever you want to call it, to say if you're able to work, you should. That, I just don't understand why we couldn't agree on that. And then just say, whether it's 2% or 20%, it shouldn't happen. It's not right for the person and their family, and it's not right for the taxpayer. That, I get, I don't think anybody's saying everybody that's on welfare is abusing that system and not working when they can. So anyway, with that, let's go ahead and call the question. Questions on agreeing on the amendment from Ms. Omar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. If you'd like a roll call, we'll do it later before the end of the markup.
Yes.
Okay.
Request a report of it.
Okay.